What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 10 top 20 tight end rankings. Already posted the quarterbacks today. Defenses will be out later, but let's dive right into tier 1. And typically, I don't spend a ton of time on like the truly elite options because they're going to be locks in your lineup. But I just have to give Brock Bowers his flowers because he was someone who I was very in on heading into the season. For me, he was like a smash pick if he fell to mid round 2. He was a guy I was willing to take pretty much as early as like very early on in the second round. And admittedly, it hadn't been great, right? He had the really strong week 1, then he suffers the knee injury. And I think a lot of people kind of mistook the knee injury for him just like being a bad pick or not being like a truly elite option at the tight end position. And while obviously he hasn't really been paying off because he has been banged up, I think this game was, a very clear indication that he is just different at the tight end position. He was banged up. He was not himself. They finally, let him sit out for a few games. He had the bye week, and he returns with a 13 target, 12 reception, 127 receiving yard, 3 touchdown game, the highest scoring PPR game of the season at 43.3 PPR points. And what's crazy about Brock Bowers is he's not even really a tight end. Like, you look at his usage in this game, and he is barely playing in line. They had Michael Mayer playing a lot of snaps. They're running a lot of 2 tight end sets, but it is very rare for Brock Bowers to actually line up in line. He's in the slot, or he's just straight up playing out wide like a wide receiver. So he is the clear-cut tight end one rest of season. I think he really has separated himself from the field. Now, he's not going to be the only tier 1 tight end because I don't want to have a million mini tiers, but Brock Bowers, tight end 1 moving forward. I don't care if it's a bad matchup against the Broncos. He's just on a different level. My other tier 1 tight end is Trey McBride. And, I actually say that Brock Bowers is in a tier by himself. Trey McBride with Jacoby Brissett has also been a monster. 22.4 PPR points in his 3 games with Brissett. They're rolling with him moving forward. Kyler, still banged up, but it seemed like the writing was on the wall. Jacoby Brissett has just been playing better at the quarterback position. So Trey McBride also gets a boost with, I guess, like the quarterback change, now getting locked in with Brissett there as the QB1. Then moving into a pretty large tier 2, I'm going to start it off with Oronde Gadsden. Day 3 rookie, now is my tight end 3 heading into week 10. In his last 4 games, he is averaging 17.9 PPR points per game. He's been super consistent, 7 for 68, 7 for 164 and a touchdown, 5 for 77 and a touchdown, and then 5 for 68. I mean, he's really been like the most consistent pass catcher on this team ever since he had his breakout, 4 weeks ago. I like the matchup against the Steelers. I think Herbert's going to have a big day. I think Gadsden also has a great opportunity to produce. Then at tight end 4, I have Tyler Warren. The production has slowed down a little bit, but I'm not panicking. He's still averaging 13.2 PPR points per game on 4 touchdowns. Some of the tight ends ahead of him have hit in the touchdown department a little bit more than he has, but I still like Warren in this tier 2 group. Then I've got another guy who's been underwhelming, George Kittle, going up against the Rams. In his 3 real games this season, he has not hit 5 receptions or 50 receiving yards. This is just a bet on the talent of George Kittle, even, in previous years, right, when he hasn't been banged up. There are going to be stretches where he kind of underwhelms. He's not necessarily the highest floor player. He's someone who gets used as a blocker a lot because he does excel there. Sometimes the 49ers will, gear super run heavy, and they haven't been the most pass heavy team in the George Kittle games. So I would not be shocked if he goes out this week, has a nuclear performance. Rams, tough defense. 49ers are underdogs. Could definitely be more pass heavy. I'm not totally freaking out on George Kittle. He is someone who has kind of been, boom or bust in the past. So he is my tight end 5 this week. Tight end 6, I've got Sam Laporta going up against the Commanders, coming off a really strong week 9, 6 receptions for 97 yards and a touchdown. And in his last 4 games, he has scored at least 16 PPR points in 3 of his last 4. Kind of similar to Kittle, he doesn't have a super high weekly floor. There are going to be certain games that are on raw games. There are going to be certain games where they dominate on the ground. Jameson Williams has his performances, but he's still someone that you can fire up as like a mid-tier tight end 1, and that's likely where he'll finish up at the end of the season. kind of guy in a similar situation, Dalton Kincaid, going up against the Dolphins this week. He's been super impressive in 2 of his last 3 games. 6 receptions for 100 yards in 2 of those 3. He scored at least 14 PPR points in 4 of his last 7, and he doesn't have the highest weekly floor. His route participation percentage is way lower than you'd want for an elite fantasy tight end. But this does look like a year 3 breakout. He's on a great offense. Really strong mid-tier tight end 1. And then I've got Dallas Goedert going up against the Packers. The dude just continues to get into the end zone, coming off the week 9 bye, but he is leading the tight end position with 7 touchdowns. He has only had 3 targets in back-to-back games, which is not ideal, but they're using him creatively in the red zone. And we actually had seen some higher target games earlier on in the season. Now, moving into tier 3, super excited to talk about my guy Colston Loveland, who really had a breakout in week 9. 7 targets, 6 receptions for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. Had that game-winning touchdown against the Bengals. And so we saw the breakout, right? Cole Kmet dealing with a concussion. He's been in and out of the lineup over the last couple of weeks. It would be great to see him build on it here against the Giants with or without Cole Kmet in the lineup, but I do think this should be the thing that really pushes him to get locked into a bigger role, even if Cole Kmet is back, and hopefully he can keep it rolling here in week 10. Then I've got Kyle Pitts going up against the Colts. He's been a pretty steady option, nothing crazy, but 7+ PPR points in 7 of his 8 games this season. And then in his last 3, he has been targeted 26 total times. Also in tier 3, I've got Harold Fannin Jr. going up against the Jets. He's also been pretty solid in his last 3, 7 for 81, 4 for 36, 6 for 62 and a touchdown. Maybe he gets that post-bye rookie bump. This Browns offense is just not great, which is, going to be the limiting factor for him. And David Njoku did not get moved, so also kind of a bummer on that front. And then my last tier 3 tight end, it's going to be Cade Otton going up against the Patriots. He had a really rough start to the season, but in his last 4 games, especially once we started seeing all the injuries to the wide receiver position, in his last 4, he has gone 4 for 81, 5 for 51, 7 for 65, and then 4 for 40. So pretty steady production there. Fine, fringe tight end 1 play. Then moving into tier 4, I've got Hunter Henry going up against the Buccaneers, and he finally had a decent floor game in week 9. 6 targets, 50 yards receiving. That was the first time he hit that mark since week 3, but still someone who's going to have a decent amount of touchdown upside week to week. Another guy that you're kind of banking on touchdowns, very boomer bust, Mark Andrews going up against the Vikings. He goes out in week 9, catches 2 passes for 22 yards. Nothing crazy, but both of those receptions ended up going for touchdowns. Like I said, very low floor, but he does have those pretty huge games in there. Then I've got Juwan Johnson going up against the Panthers, and he's had kind of an interesting season arc where he scored in double-digit PPR points in each of the first 3 games. Then his next 3, he did not hit 10 PPR points, and then in his last 3, he has gone for 10+ in all 3 of them. The Saints also traded Rashid Shaheed, so he kind of gets bumped up the totem pole in terms of the targets on this roster. Now it's pretty much just Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson. So fine high-end tight end 2. It's just a really bad offense. So the ceiling does seem pretty limited. Tight end 16, I've got David Njoku going up against the Jets. On the season, he's averaging 9.3 points per game on 2 touchdowns. The volume's just been all right, 5.6 targets per game. It's just tough to get super excited about David Njoku. Maybe I have too much of a gap between Fannin and Njoku, but Fannin to me has just been the more interesting option, and I think he could get a bump, like I mentioned, coming out of the bye week. A couple more guys in this tier. Zach Ertz going up against the Lions. Jaden Daniels going to be out. Terry McLaurin likely out. Ertz has not been great in Mariota starts, only 6.2 PPR points per game, but his routes are going to be there, and Mariota's also just got to throw someone the ball. And then the last guy in this tier, Dalton Schultz going up against the Jaguars. We will wait and see on the status of CJ Stroud, who is dealing with a concussion, but Dalton Schultz has gone for at least 60+ yards, I think in 3 of his last 4 games. I have the last 3 here, but I don't think that was the case for week 8. So He's starting to give you decent production. I guess this could be my soapbox to rip on the Texans wide receiver usage, even though it's the tight end video. But you have a team, right, that has a clear need on offense on the offensive line. Like that unit is just unbelievably brutal. And instead of addressing that in the draft, they opt to draft wide receivers in round 2 and round 3. Yet they just don't want to use those guys. It really makes no sense to me. Like, you look at Jalen Noel specifically, like Higgins has kind of gotten out there. He hasn't been great. On a per route basis, Jalen Noel has been super effective, and you've just got him buried behind like Christian Kirk and Xavier Hutchinson, and it really just makes no sense to me. And you might be wondering how that relates to Dalton Schultz. I think it might actually be a positive because if they're rolling out the worst wide receivers, that actually helps Dalton Schultz because he becomes, more of a viable target. So he's the last guy here in tier 4. Basically what I'm saying, free Jalen Noel, let the dude play. He's looked super fun and he just can't get on the field. And then the 5th and final tier, this could definitely be an extended tier if we were going past 20. I've got Theo Johnson and Mason Taylor. Theo Johnson, he keeps getting into the end zone, which like maybe at some point I should just bump him up the rankings. But like, this is not a great passing attack. And the floor is just so low because he has 5 touchdowns in his last 6 games, but he has gone for over 35 receiving yards one singular time this season. And I want to say that was just like one big breakaway touchdown. So it's tough to trust Theo Johnson, but if he just continues to score, I might have to move him up, I guess. And then Mason Taylor to close us out here. Week 8 before the bye, 5 for 34 and a touchdown. He scored 11 PPR points in 3 of his last 5. This is just a really bad offense. It's a bad passing attack. Maybe they have to go more pass heavy now that they've gutted the defense, but tough to get super excited about Mason Taylor. I feel like once you're getting outside of tier 3, that's where tight end really starts to feel sketchy. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. If you guys enjoyed, hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.